You're a little too fucking happy for a team that has a far worse quarterback that went out in just as satisfaction with higher expectations. How are you feeling? How are you feeling?
First of all, let me put these glasses back on so y'all can't see my pain.
How are you fucking feeling right now, Mister? We still go back to back. Yeah, we've lost 3 straight games in disastrous fashion. We just lost to the Chargers, who suck shit. But we can still go back to back. I still got confidence. How are you feeling after getting the Kyle Shanahan hammer right to the mouth?
I mean, you know what I'm saying? Pause. But like, I mean, obviously I'm not feeling great. You know, my people got smoked out. It's on live TV in front of with the nation watching. Like, it's the worst feeling in the world. Like, they had practice squad dudes on defense and we couldn't score 20 points. That's ridiculous. Jake Elliott, who after last playoff run had a couple misses, but it was like, okay, maybe like clutched up when we needed him to make kicks. It was okay. And then throughout this year, you saw the wheels falling off. Immediately misses an extra point. All right, buddy. Listen, thank you for your service. You've won a Super Bowls. You have like a 60-yard field goal. You have mad game winners. I will appreciate you in 10 years when we celebrate the 2024 team. And that's going to be awesome. You can't be here anymore. I think that right now, the fact that like, so basically everybody knows Patullo is not going to be the offensive coordinator, which is like perfect. He reportedly is still going to be like in the building. He still is going to be like connected. Like, I don't think he's going to be completely dismissed from the building,
which is weird.
Which is, yeah, like I think.
And relationships go so deep in this league.
yes, but also I think what you've seen throughout this year with Patullo is, and what a lot of people have said is, he's very good at like game planning and like being like in the meeting rooms. But in terms of being a coordinator and being somebody who can see what's happening in real time and adjusting, that's not a strong suit of his. And so a lot of times you've seen the Eagles come out and whatever, you know, thing that they have to work on that week in practice, they'll be fine that first or second drive. And then the other defense is like, okay, this is what they're doing. Let's key in on that. And the Patullo's like, well, that's kind of all I had. So we kind of just have to run it back. Like the second half Eagles offense has been completely, abysmal throughout the entire year. And so that's one of the reasons why he might still be involved in all this. Overall, I'm at the point where, and I've gone a little bit back and forth, Nick Sirianni has to be fired.
There we go.
He has to.
I was going to say, we're not going to sit up here and spend all this time focusing on Patullo. No, this is clearly bigger than Patullo.
He has to be fired. And I think that like for a coach that has been at the helm of one of the most successful Eagles runs in franchise history, we are now in 3 straight years where at the end of 23 there was talk about him being fired. 4 weeks going into the bye of 2024, there was talk about him being fired. After this year, there's talk about him being fired. We can't do this every single year where there's always questions about your competency or the stability that you're providing the team with. And so for teams that have, you mentioned it with Jim Harbaugh, if you're going to be the CEO guy, okay, I need real value and I need you to have this company running smoothly, and I need everything to be on a string, and it is clearly not. And at every single point, and really every single year, there has been a time where his brashness and his competitive immaturity has shown. You always see him barking at fans or making these like loud statements or celebrating crazy when you are not recognizing the situation. You beat the Bills 13-12 because and the offense has like 28 yards in the second half. And you come out and you're like, listen, it is what it is. We got to win. We can't complain about the win because that's just going to mess up the vibes. Dude, we had 28 yards of offense. Like I think throughout this entire experience, Sirianni has shown multiple points of incompetency. And so I do think that he has to go and there has to be some level of stability at the head coaching position. And that has to be the first thing that happens if we want to stop having this super up year, super down year, super up year, super down year.
I have one thing that you didn't mention I'm thinking about.
I can think it too.
Was it Kevin Patullo or was it Nick Sirianni that directed Jalen Hurts to throw in a triple coverage to his tight end on the last play of the game?
Question.
Which one was that?
Question. So, where would you have thrown the ball?
No, not there.
Where?
Or was it?
AJ. 1-on-1.
Yeah, give us AJ.
Yeah, fuck it. That's your only hope.
Which one was it?
I'm asking you though.
Or was it the GM's fault for paying the 18th best quarterback in the league $50 million a year? Who are we putting the blame on there?
See, this is extremely funny. Extremely funny.
LaShawn
Because-
McCoy says, I did a lot of digging.
Extremely funny.
I know some people, and the problem is we can't do different exotic looks, different formations, different motions, because I'm hearing that Jalen Hurts can't really do it. There was a media tour to say Jalen Hurts is incapable of running modern football as soon as the game ended.
Now,
Which is obviously like
I will-
dramatic.
hold on.
Go ahead.
There's two very, very key things.
Okay, go
Oh my
ahead.
gosh.
Or really three. One, I told him yesterday that I promise to not get rage baited, and I see what you're doing, and I'm telling you, I'm staying.
There's
chill.
no
That's-
rage bait at all. That was
No.
This is all simple observations.
No.
Is this any different than anything I've ever said?
Hold on. That's one. Two, I do think that it is funny that for a lot of, we'll skip two. Three, I think that like obviously with Hurts, yes, he did not play a great game. He has to be better. I've said this a couple weeks ago, especially after the Chargers game, where it's like, listen, regardless of who is calling plays, the offense can't look that bad with you at the helm. That is true. I do understand that. The way that people are talking about Jalen Hurts is very frustrating to me because I do not feel as if it is 100% fair, and I do think that it is somewhat off base. I think that this kind of talk. Wait, can you pull the
LaShawn McCoy tweet?
Yes, please. This kind of talk of we can't do exotic looks, different formations, different motions, as if Jalen Hurts sees a jet sweep and now he short circuits. And there have been different parts of the season and his career in which people have questioned his ability to do certain things. Most recently and specifically at the start of this year, what was the big thing about the running game? Oh, well, they don't run well because they don't run from under center, and they can't run from under center because Jalen Hurts doesn't know how to do it, and he won't do it. And it's like clearly Sirianni and Patullo, they're the head coaches. They see what's going on in practice. They know that they can't run under center and have a successful game. And then we get to week 7 or week 8 after whatever bye, and you have a game plan that is under center, and you have one of the best Jalen Hurts games of his career. You've seen the under center stuff be put into the game plan more and more. I think a lot of the things that people want to see from the Eagles offense, one, has not even been tried, and I do not think that it is not tried solely because of Jalen Hurts. I do think that having ideas and trying to once again at least try, that is 100% coaching, and it is on the coaches to say, even if Jalen Hurts isn't the best at throwing over the middle of the field, never said that he's Josh Allen, Mahomes, or any of these guys, right? But that is a coaching thing. That is on you to take a player and to force him into uncomfortable positions and to try and make him better at those things. And I refuse to believe that Jalen Hurts is some dumb, uncoachable player the way that people talk about him. And so, yes, he has his weaknesses. He has his flaws. To act like he has an IQ of 1 because he can't do different formations. Look at the final drive. We're in like the only motion that they ever have is a stupid short motion with AJ or with Devontae. With any other motion, you know exactly what's going to happen. If I see Devonta Smith in motion coming across the field, he's getting the ball. Why? Because he never goes in motion. The things that the Eagles have done is extremely predictable and it's extremely simplistic. And so then whenever they do try, especially from 20 to 20, somehow in the red zone, they solid, right? But from 20 to 20, when you see anything that is somewhat exotic from the Eagles, you also know exactly where that's going because that is one play that they run every month that can be creative. And so I do think that ultimately top down, this is a Sirianni and Patullo issue more so than a
Sure.
Jalen Hurts can't handle whatever offensive scheme that people are trying to
You backed me
employ.
into a corner. You completely reframed this into now I have to act like Jalen Hurts is an idiot, and that's not the point at all.
Yeah.
You've completely reframed this in a way that to disagree is to call Jalen Hurts dumb as rocks, and that's
That
not the
is
point at all.
that is how people have discussed
I get
Jalen
it.
Hurts.
I get what you're saying. That it's not that he's dumb; it's that he's limited, and you brushed over the middle of the field stuff. That's real. I don't think the point was ever that they can't run out of under center. It's that he wouldn't be comfortable passing out of under center and it'd make you a little too predictable because you would clearly be run focused.
And then he immediately went and dispelled that and had good games.
He did not dispel that. He did have a good game, but he had a good game because if I remember correctly, that was a game where they had a few really deep bomb touchdowns. I think it was one to Devontae and one to AJ Brown.
Who
Right?
was it against as well?
against the Vikings.
Yeah, and they bombed him a couple times deep, and that was right. They had two really big long touchdowns in that game, right?
Yes.
If I remember correctly, up the sidelines. That is never the issue. No matter what, Jalen Hurts is a very good deep ball thrower up the sidelines. Most NFL quarterbacks are. Obviously, some are inaccurate. Every quarterback that makes NFL and is a starter has a baseline accuracy that they can make deep go balls. You do your little pro day, your combine. That is not the skill gap of anything ever, is being able to hit a go ball up the sideline. That's the most rudimentary read because you're not like, it's pretty simple. You see the cornerback, you see if he's open, etc. The thing with Jalen Hurts is, can he turn his back to the defense? Can he identify if a 2 high shell is rotating down to a 1 high shell, if the middle linebacker is dropping into a Tampa 2, all the exotic stuff right now over the middle of the field after he turns his back into play action. If he can't do that at a high level, you can't run under center play actions too much, which if you can't run that, then the under center element is kind of lost on the passing game. Now you're just trying to get good runs, but the passing is going to be mediocre. Now you can't do exotic motions out of that. You can't do all this different stuff. Like, it's a cascading effect off of the inability to do one thing really well that it doesn't make him an idiot. It makes him poor at turning his back to defense at one specific skill that holds back that one specific area.
But
And he isn't good at identifying pressure in the
yes,
middle of the field. He floods too fast to the sidelines and he throws it deep, throws the check down. He's never done that well a single day in his life. Even when things have worked well last year, it wasn't because of that. It's because everything was so good around him that they did those rudimentary things. It was go balls. It was sideline checks where he's reading one half of the field. If the running game isn't good enough, then all of a sudden these flaws shine more. And we don't got to pretend those flaws aren't there. That doesn't make him an idiot. It just makes him a flawed football player.
I will agree that he is a flawed football player and that he's not perfect. I understand that. What I am saying is, at every turn, when you look at this coaching staff and you look at the messaging from them, Sirianni's two biggest things are we going to win the turnover battle and are we going to win explosives? And if we can win those two things, then we'll be fine. Obviously, finding a way to create explosives has been the undoing of this type of philosophy, especially for this year. But if you go back to 22, you have an offensive Siri's out here ridiculous. If you go back to 22 and you have Shane Steichen, you have an actual capable offensive coordinator of having a young quarterback at the time who's, I guess, in his prime now.
Yeah.
You have Steichen there. He's pushing him to do things that he was not doing the year before. He allowed him to be in situations in which he is growing. That is on the offensive coordinator in that sense. Even if you go back to 2023, they collapsed for two reasons. One, because Hurts and Sirianni are clashing the entire year, and after the year, which is, and also just side note, you know how like after the season, there's always like the piece of like what went wrong and everything like that. That piece got released 2 weeks before the 24 season, as opposed to right after the 23 season. Very, very weird. However, even in 23, you have a Jalen Hurts that in Brian Johnson's offense, which I can't believe that I'm yearning for at this point. But even in that offense, you saw a lot more diverse choices of routes and options and things like that. And statistically, it was his best year. And they did not lose that. They did not lose that year because Jalen Hurts and the offensive struggles. If people don't remember, that defense was piss poor. That defense was like 32nd in yards, the passing defense specifically, 31st in yards, didn't create any turnovers, gave up touchdowns. They got walked down by Drew Lock. They blew like a 20-point lead at home to the Cardinals. Like at every turn, that defense was letting the offense down, and you still saw Jalen Hurts that was able to execute and lead really, really good offense. And so ultimately, what I'm saying is he ever going to be Tom Brady or Peyton Manning, where he can do at the highest of levels
Yes.
all the
Exactly.
quote unquote quarterbacky things. No, I do not think that he is.
But
I don't think that he's ever going to.
But you realize you also have to stop pushing it and forcing his name into these upper echelon conversations that requires upper echelon skills.
Yeah, I think you just
I'll
described
That's where you have to stop.
I'll say this because honestly the biggest thing from a Hurt standpoint that I think is worrisome is the fact that the running looks completely different.
Yeah.
That in itself, you can there's ways to scheme around whatever you like to do offensively and create we've seen them be able to create a passing game that is successful around the things that Jalen Hurts likes to do. The running part aspect of it is where I think that he is different than your typical game managers of your Bo Nixes of the world or whatever, because
Buddy's a way better runner now.
And that's
crazy.
and that's a problem.
Crazy.
And that's a problem. And that's where I think looking at how additive Jalen Hurts is in the run game, if he is not going to scramble, and like we saw in week 1 of the season, if he is not going to be used as a quarterback runner, those things is something where now I'm looking at it, and if that's not there, that's the most worrying.
I think you said a few things I want to, before we move on. You mentioned that with Shane Steichen, he did really well, and obviously to go with Kellen Moore. If you need one of the best offensive coordinators in the game to be competent, that's a problem. That's kind of the first sign of being average. The last sentence you said, he's never going to be able to do these quarterbacky things at a high level. That's a veiled way of saying he's average. All these things are kind of stacking up that I feel like you're with a rose-tinted glasses, with the glass half full way, describing that he's average and not terrible.
Well, my question,
which I don't disagree with.
No, but my question for you is like, there's for every other, for not every other, but for a lot of other quarterbacks, you will look at them. We just spent 10 minutes about you calling Greg Roman a terrorist and having him be like, listen, you're putting Justin Herbert in these positions where he only has 4 or 5 opportunities to be successful. You can go up and down the line at any level or in any tier of quarterback, and other people will get some type of sympathy if their offensive coordinator is as bad, and if their head coach is. We are looking at the head coach of the football team and saying you are incompetent and unfit to run this team.
Of course, and that's why we've already established that the coaching staff is an issue. I'm not putting anything all on Jalen Hurts' shoulders. Their OC should be fired, etc. They won with the same scheme last year. Devonta Smith said after his game, it's the same exact scheme. The run game just doesn't work as well, and having different play caller does make a difference. Obviously, the in-game stuff, like you mentioned, the second half's falling off. There's some element that your OC being less talented in in-game instincts makes a difference, but in large part, it's the same scheme. It just fell apart. So I think part of it is that they're kind of forced into the scheme because of Jalen Hurts' specific strengths. And then the Justin Herbert comparison, it's just like, that's just use context and let's talk about their abilities. Obviously, they're in different calibers of players. But I do give some sympathy there. But also, like, you mentioned that a few years ago, he hit his best season when he was a better runner. That makes sense. 3 years ago, the NFL is just different now. Things change. Back then, Brian Flores was a madman because he was doing all these exotic shell changes and all these different disguised blitzes. Some linebackers were blitzing when they weren't looking like they were going to, and vice versa. Everybody does that now. The game has just moved towards complexity in defense, and maybe that'll flip over in a couple of years. Everything's a cycle. But right now, things are very different than they were 3 years ago with Jalen Hurts as a player and with the defenses as in large part. And all of that kind of makes sense as why Jalen Hurts does poorly now against more complicated defenses when he's a uncomplicated quarterback.
You have to give people an opportunity to be.
No, there's no way you just led with that. An opportunity.
Keep going. That was funny. Keep going.
I didn't even finish my sentence.
I know.
An opportunity. Continue.
Let him be the best version of himself.
No, but you have to give people opportunities with competency at the head coaching position. Sure. And I do think that like if like we've seen really really good players, and obviously the tiers are different in terms of how we look at them overall, but if you're comparing people to their own standards and to the things that they have set, we're having questions about Patrick Mahomes and saying, hey, like Andy Reid is kind of falling off and he's not necessarily, scheming up the best things. Now we're seeing a lesser version of Patrick Mahomes. We've seen that with Herbert. We've seen that with, with Jared Goff, and obviously like the interior offensive line is one
Yeah.
is one of like the bigger issues. But you still are trying to find answers at every tier of quarterback, depending on who the head guy is or who one of the main coaches is. If they are unfit and if they are somebody like 3 years of people essentially calling for their job, most of the time, whenever that happens, we are looking at the head coach and we are saying you are holding people back. And so I do think that there is an element of Sirianni holding him back and holding this offense. And because it's not just Jalen Hurts, the entire offense is held back by Sirianni and by Patullo and by the way that, that they like to run offense. And so I do think that I would like if everybody cleaned house. I would like if Sirianni took his little from Theta Nu and both of them got to leave the building and we got actual competent head coaches, because the roller coaster of getting to a Super Bowl and then having a first round exit or winning a Super Bowl and then having a late season collapse, that is just like everything else in the Eagles offense is not sustainable.
Yeah. I 100% agree. It's not all Jalen Hurts' fault. 100%. You need to acknowledge the bad situation. I just think that Eagles fans also need to acknowledge his part in it and that it will be a sustained thing going forward. You're going to spend the rest of your life being like, why won't the OC draw up motion plays and like some of these certain things that are just like intrinsically who Jalen Hurts is. And you're right that it's not 100% him, but I think most Eagles fans treat it like it's 0% him.
Yeah.
And I just think for expectation calibration over the years,
Exactly.
there should probably be some recognition that he is a large part of it. One, not being the only part, and while it's obviously not impossible to win with him, they've made 2 Super Bowls, they've won one. You can get it done if everything else is good around him. But it probably behooves everybody to understand that it's closer to an average, quote unquote, game manager situation that like things need to be good around him, rather than you can bank on Hurts to hide flaws or Hurts to be some floor raiser for everybody else,
Yeah. It's so hilarious because if we're being honest here, if AJ Brown just catches one of those drop balls that he over the last couple of days ago, then this is probably a whole entire different conversation.
Yeah.
So on top of that, like that's working against Jalen Hurts. I didn't even realize this, but over the last like 4 years, bro, he's continuously had different OCs, and obviously not to no fault of his own, just the way league works and how teams operate or whatever. But when it comes to quarterbacks that you like to put him into the same conversation as, they at least have like bare minimum like at least 2 years of having the same OC, not learning a new system, or at least not having to bear new lines of conversation when it comes to just figuring out new game plans. So that's working towards his way too, but still, like he's not aiding or assisting or making anyone's jobs or lives easier with certain deficiencies that he has.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways you can like theoretically say all this stuff that like it makes sense like logically to not hold certain things against him. End of the day, he's not good at a lot of these important quarterback skills that like outside of the on paper context, we can like watch him play and analyze it and be like, he's not that great at a lot of things. So it's tough for someone that's not an Eagles fan to want to give him all this benefit of the doubt when there's tangible things that he's just poor at as well.
Yeah. So
All this benefit of the doubt is what though? Like,
So what does that mean?
yeah, because I mean, like, I am very curious, and if it turns out differently, then I like listen, hand up, you got me. But I'm very curious to see what this looks like without Sirianni, and to see.
Well, it depends who they hire, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
But
If they hire Mike McDaniel and they hire a genius that's like amazing at taking advantage of flawed players, like he had, like Tyreek Hill got 1,800 yards of Tua. Like great coaches can make do and win with weaknesses in the roster. So I don't think anybody's suggesting it's impossible to have any type of success with Jalen Hurts. We just saw it last year. Like that was how you do it. You conduct an amazing ground game. It's not the only way to do it, I'm sure. I'm sure there's other ways to drop winning plays, winning schemes with him on the field. So
Exactly.
yeah, I'm not saying there's no chance in hell that he could win. I'm just saying for a lot of quarterbacks you might compare him to, there's less chances that there are ways he could win.
Ultimately, obviously, like the Sirianni stuff is the biggest thing on my mind at the moment. And you guys might call it. I'm giving him just a little bit even more credit because I've seen the incompetency that you've been dealing with for 4 years, and you've been to 2 Super Bowls and you won one, and you've been able to be in these positions. And ultimately, when we are looking at who's running this team, and you gotta shave your head to lock in, and you're arguing with fans. It's like, yo, this dude really should not be.
That's
here.
the other part. Is like, so yes, two things are true. Jalen Hurts has played good in the big games, so no one can take that away from him. That he has a Super Bowl MVP, he played well. You mentioned I give him the benefit of the doubt because he's made it 2 Super Bowls with this incompetency. I just
or just not just a little bit more.
sure. I know.
more
I get your point. I just don't ever want to assign like team success means quarterback good. Like that whole like
Yeah.
connection of just like intrinsically, if this worked out, you have to get some amount of credit. I never want to view it that way. Like I just the entire minimization of the game and of all 22 players in the field to quarterback battle. Like I just never want to use that as a factor.
This is it's a
He's a
larger-
winner. That's
it's
the
a-
worst
it's a-
talking point ever.
It's a larger combo, but I do think specifically, and like the only reason why you even think to do it with quarterbacks is because more so than basically any other position in sports, like you do have ultimately the decision power
Sure,
and the most like a disproportionate amount of influence on how the offense works.
For sure.
And so that is why you do it. We don't have to get into that, but yes, I do think that like basically fire him today, please, and then let's get a serious head coach.
I got one stat for you, Isaac, real quick before you move on, and I just want to leave it at this. No other words after this for me. Jalen Hurts. The Eagles are 1-6 this year when he has to throw the ball 30 times or more.
Tough.
Just noticing.
He said another word, so I'm gonna say another word. Check the stats for other quarterbacks when they have to throw a crazy amount of times.
It's not 1-6.
Yeah, it's not a good sign at all. It actually
Yeah.
means you're down in the script, so that is a little flawed. But yeah, I mean,
Just noticing. That's all.